All right, so good evening, everyone. I'm Melissa Klosterman-Lando. I'm the principal of Montrose Elementary, and I'd like to welcome you tonight to our kindergarten information evening. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me go back here. All right, and here we go. As you can see, some pictures of us at Montrose. And in case you didn't know, if you're a new family to us, we have a new Monty Moose mascot this year who just revealed himself on March 20, I think it was March 23rd was the first day we got to see the new Monty Moose. He is up there on the right, and he went to visit all of our classrooms. And you can kind of see it, some of the pictures. All right, so there's some introductions of some very special people on here that I'd like to introduce. So go ahead, kindergarten teachers, take it away.
Mrs. White, you got to unmute first, my dear.
That is the quote of 2020, 2021.
Here we go.
Please unmute. I'm Caroline White, and this is my 5th year in kindergarten, and next year will be my 6th. And let's see, I live in Bexley. I have one son who went all the way through Bexley Schools. And so I'm really happy to meet all the new faces and see some of the old ones.
Hi, everyone. I am Cassidy Schlitter, and this is my 14th year of teaching kindergarten. I am a Bexley graduate, born and raised here, and I actually have 2 children, one of which is also attending kindergarten in Bexley. He will be going to Maryland next year. So I am feeling all the feels that some of you first-time kindergarten parents are no doubt feeling. But I'm so looking forward to meeting a lot of your kiddos next year.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Young. This is my 6th year teaching kindergarten at Montrose. I have a 4-year-old son who will be attending pre-K next year. And I am a Montrose alum. I went K-6 to Montrose. I always knew that I wanted to be a teacher, and when all my teachers at Montrose would ask me about my job when I grew up, I would say, I'm going to be a teacher at Montrose. So I love being here with all of your kiddos.
Hi, I'm Michelle Hipsley. I'm the school counselor here at Montrose. I've been in education for 28 years. And I'm just completing my 22nd year at Montrose as school counselor. And I have a senior that is graduating from high school this year. So as you are starting your new journey as a kindergartner, I will be starting my new journey as having my firstborn go away to college. And also I have a son that is 15 and a half, and I know that because he has his temporary permit. So stay off the streets in my neck of the woods because he is learning how to drive.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cindy Tyson. I am the full-time registered nurse at Montrose. This is my 6th school year at Montrose, and I am also a community member as well. I have 3 children. I have a 27-year-old daughter who's getting married in October. I have a 24-year-old daughter who teaches in Gahanna, and then I have a 15-year-old son who is a current freshman, almost sophomore at Bexley High School.
Thank you, team. Thanks for being here this evening. And point of information, families, just to let you know, you're going to see tonight pictures, like for instance, the ones in front of you are obviously not during the pandemic. These were pictures that were taken prior to that. So I don't want you to think that we're at school and we're not masked and kids are really close together. It's quite the opposite. You're going to see in a few minutes pictures where our students are masked and we are staying 3 feet apart, but we can do so in such a great way. Kids are really safe and they're collaborative and having a great time together. So just a point of information, I didn't want you to think that we are currently unmasked at school. All right, going on with the next slide.
All right, that is me. Welcome to Kindergarten at Montrose. Our first quote and slide just says that play is often talked about as if it were a relief from serious learning. But for kids, play is serious learning, and play really is the work of childhood. So we just know that, especially coming from either a pre-K or maybe your kids have been at home, it's 80% or more playtime and 20% or less academic. And so we really take that into account when we are transitioning them into kindergarten and just making sure that we are finding a really good balance throughout the year of both play and learning through play, as well as academic learning. Next slide, please. All right, so the first slide just talks about how we begin our day in our classrooms. We work really, really hard to establish and set up routines and procedures so that students know what to expect, and they can start to build that independence of taking care of themselves and following through with routines. So generally they come into the classroom, they hang up their backpacks, they drop off their lunchbox if they pack. They might turn a folder in. We usually have take-home folders. And then they're going to head to their seats and start some sort of morning work. So it's really nice for them to know always what they can expect coming into the classroom. They know what to do. From there, our day begins with just really working on fostering and building a classroom community. This takes place through morning meeting, where we greet one another. So we work on greeting each other by looking one another in the eye and saying, good morning, how are you? We ask each other questions. We had a fun time getting really creative with our greetings this year. There's a lot of elbow bumping, maybe a couple foot taps. We do some like dancing in front of each other. But just really working on, it's really just learning one another's names, learning more about one another, and making sure that everybody feels safe and happy to start their day, because we want them to know one another and enjoy being in the classroom. And then also at the bottom there, we talked about working towards independence. That's, starts from the very beginning. They come in, they take care of hanging up their backpacks. They take care of turning in their folder, getting to their seat, getting their work started. And obviously we support them. We remind them, especially in the beginning of the year, sometimes even in the middle and sometimes even in the end as well. But it's just really important that they know the routines and procedures of our classroom. Next slide.
You guys are so good that even our students fill out their own Google forms this year as kindergartners. That's pretty unbelievable.
All sorts of new routines and
That's
procedures.
right. But they do it, and you teach them so well how to do it. That's for sure. All right, moving on. There we go.
All right, so the next one, has obviously the top picture shows, what morning meeting and morning greeting looks like in our classrooms now. So, they are spaced out safely, but they're walking around and they walk up to each other and they greet each other and say good morning, and they have to say their name. And we pick all sorts of, like I said, different ways to just work on listening and responding to their peers. The morning meeting also includes some sharing. Like I said, maybe we're sharing about our favorite color or how many siblings we have or don't have. It might also include what we did over the weekend, or just a fun fact. A morning message is generally written on a board, and that might just be working on talking about what our day is going to look like, so they know what to expect for the day. It also might include, just some simple phonics activities to get our day started. Find the trick word the, or fill in a missing letter. Sometimes some math facts pop in there too. And then we move on to calendar, which is a lot of different math activities are involved in our calendar now. It's a lot of patterning, a lot of counting how many days we've been in school, counting by tens and ones. Goodness, I can't even tell you all of the different features that are coming up in our calendar every morning. So it really gets the day going with their brains thinking. And then next we move into phonemic awareness, which is just all oral language activities where we practice rhyming, beginning sounds and words, compound word identifications. And now we're, into tapping out blending and segmenting words into more challenging parts of the year. But that's how our day begins. There's a lot of parts of our day. So these are some more of them. So after that, or really not after that, this is not in order. It depends on our schedule each year. It sometimes changes, but we have math, which is Bridges and Number Corner, reading workshop, snack, foundations, which is our phonics program, writers workshop, recess, lunch. We have specials. This year, we have them every day. We'll see what that will look like for next year. We have science and social studies. Sometimes we have free choice time. Always we have read alouds. And in the past, we've had 5th grade buddies. We'll see what that will look like for next year. I will say that most of our programs, actually, I'm not going to say because it's Mrs. Young or Mrs. White's slide, but I wanted to add before I continued, as we are speaking, if you have a question, I think it might be easiest if you wrote it in the chat so that we can either answer it throughout or we can just make sure that we get to them at the end, but so you don't forget it.
I think that's a great idea to put it in the chat. That's smart.
But yeah, so these are some pictures, of what our class looks like now. And you can see, in the middle right picture, they're doing readers workshop. They still have partnerships and they're still working together, playing some math games and doing some independent work time as well. Specials consists of art, music, gym, and library. All right. You could move to the next one. And I'm going to pass over to Mrs. White. Thank you.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Our academic programs. If you have older children, you will be familiar with our academic programs because the great thing about them is that they start in kindergarten and they go all the way through 5th grade. So what we're doing in kindergarten is we are laying the foundation. We are giving them schedules and routines that they will see year after year and build on. We use Teachers College Reading and Writing Project for writing and reading. Writing is usually the kids' favorite time of day. If something happens and we don't get to writing, we will hear about it, because they really do love to write. They start out writing pictures and soon words and then sentences and whole stories, and you will be amazed at the growth that they make. In our reading, it's also Teachers College Reading and Writing. We have reading partners. We have a reading workshop where we go through different parts of the reading workshop. Everything is very explicit, and we use language that they will hear every year from kindergarten on. Cassidy touched on phonics and phonemic awareness. We have 2 programs, Foundations and Haggerty, and you'll hear more about this next year, but you will see probably your kids tapping out sounds and writing letters that way. Foundations really explicitly teaches the letters and how to make them so that we have some good handwriting, and the kids really do enjoy doing this. And then for math, we have a wonderful program, Bridges, and that also starts in kindergarten and goes through 5th. And it is like a workshop program. It's a beautiful program because you can, by the questions that you ask, you can tell where the kids are and how you can scaffold the kids who need some more practice and how you can expand for kids who already have the concept and are ready to go on. So it's really a very nice program. And I think you guys will like it too if you're new to them. As Cassidy, Mrs. Schlitter said, we rely a lot on play. Our math program is based a lot on games, and it's all hands-on, and everything that we teach them, they practice through hands-on and games. We have different workstations, and we have a choice time. where they can get things to do, and they think they're playing, but they always are developing other concepts. We have a lot of blocks. We have these manipulatives that you put together and they make 3D objects, and the kids really like it. We have recess. They have a long lunch recess. They have a short morning recess and then a short afternoon recess. And sometimes later on in the year, we would only have 2 recesses, but the kids do need to get out. They're 5 and they really enjoy being outside and using their large muscles. And we do a lot of learning all day long, so they really kind of need that break.
And here is where I get to take over. I'm going to start with recess first, since that is how our day typically flows. As Mrs. White mentioned, we typically at the beginning of the year have 3 recesses. We would go out for a morning recess. We would have a longer recess right before lunch, and then we will have an afternoon recess. This time of year, as we get towards the end of the year, we start to fade out that 3rd recess and go to 2. Because our programs do stretch for longer, they're able to sit and they have more stamina. We are aware that right now we're still in the middle of a pandemic, and many of our students' stamina is lower than it typically would be. So we make sure that we accommodate that in breaks throughout the day for those motor times, especially since we are trying to maintain our distance in the classroom and aren't moving about the classroom as much as we typically would be. So recess is before lunch. This year, we have had the opportunity to have kindergarten and 1st grade on the playground together. We play in our own separate zones in our cohorts. So each class has its own zone that rotates throughout the week, so that there's an opportunity for all children to experience all parts of the playground safely. We anticipate that it will be probably pretty similar next year, where we'll have those 6 different zones that we rotate so we're not intermingling classes. Sometimes this can be a different experience for students, particularly maybe during this time when you have been staying away from playgrounds for a while, or perhaps they haven't been in a preschool or a daycare program in a while. So there's a few things that we'd like your help with. One of those is problem solving. Kindergartners work on problem solving in social situations. They work on problem solving in math, and basically in every other area of their lives. One of the problem solving techniques that we like for students is actually trying to solve on their own before they ask for adult intervention when a problem comes up. So we discuss things like, what happens if you get hurt on the playground? Well, you can always look for a grown-up if you absolutely need to, or maybe it's not that bad and you can keep on playing. Sometimes there's a dispute over who had a toy or a ball first. How can we talk that out together and find a way to solve that problem before we ask for an adult to solve it for us? Sometimes students do need some adult intervention. We anticipate that, especially at the beginning of the year. So we teach problem solving techniques, and Mrs. Hipsley goes over that in her SEL lessons, which we like to incorporate in our own classrooms and at recess as well. One of the things that can be a little bit anxiety provoking for students during recess is, what are they going to do and who are they going to play with? Particularly in a situation where they're coming together with a lot of new peers for the first time. So one of the things that you can help with there is to talk about who are some peers that they know in their class, or who are some peers that they would like to play with or get to know better during that time, and really planning with them before they come to school what it is that they might do during recess, who it is that they might play with. We talk a lot about this at the beginning of the school year too. What are our options for each of the zones? Since this year we have different zones and there's different activities that would be appropriate. So 2 of the zones are play structures, and then the rest are really free play, which kind of allows for that creativity to take place. Now I'm going to go on to lunch, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. This year, we were pretty creative in how we did lunch. And we actually really liked a lot of the new procedures and routines that we built together as a staff. One of our favorite things about lunch this year is that we were actually eating outside. Most of the students, I think, enjoyed this more than we even anticipated. And I think the staff members really did too. Right now, everybody has their own zone. So each class is eating in their own space. Kindergarten, first grade are together again. So we would have the same lunchtime, and we have our own assigned space for outdoor lunch. This is when the weather permits. And fortunately, we've had some pretty good weather, minus the snow the other day. We have basically our 6 zones where each of our classes are, and they bring out their yoga mats or sit-upons. And then when necessary, we will eat in the cafeteria. So you can see on the bottom picture here, this is what our cafeteria currently looks like. Students are unmasked in the cafeteria, but they are 6 feet apart with dividers because they are eating. At the end of lunch, then they mask back up, and staff members come around to help them throw away their trash. They are not walking around the cafeteria unmasked. We have lots of monitors in the cafeteria who have been assisting us. And it's actually been a really smooth process considering the fact that we've had to have that many students in the cafeteria 6 feet apart. For your lunch options, or for your child's lunch options, there's 3 options that they can choose each day. The first option is always there, and that is going home for lunch. Some parents have the flexibility, or maybe they would like for their student to not be in that larger group unmasked, even though they're 6 feet apart. So we have going home as an option. We do ask that if you or your child is going to elect to do this option, that you would send an email to the classroom teacher and copy our school secretary, Mrs. Anderson, on it. That procedure is a newer one for some families that we haven't tried before, and it's worked out well. So our lunchtime is an hour. That if your child would choose that option, they would go home for lunch for the entire hour, and then they would return at the end. This year, we also have free school lunches provided by the USDA, and next year that will be the same. So I just read from USDA, they're providing it again for another year. So your student's second option would be a hot lunch that could be free. And they have 2 choices, which is the hot lunch on the school calendar or a cheese pizza if they do not like the hot lunch that's on the school calendar. And then the final option is, of course, for you to pack them a lunch and for them to bring it to school. Students will be able to choose different options each day. So you would help them to plan what option they would do for each day of the week. And then in the morning, they'll choose that option with their teacher. Typically, each of us have a sign-in board, and then they move a magnet that has their name on it to whatever they're doing for the day. These are some things you could help us with right now. If your child is going to pack their lunch most days, and even if they're buying the hot lunch, it is helpful for you to have them practice opening and closing their own food items. Some of those fine motor skills can be difficult for students, and there's a lot of students in the cafeteria or a lot of students eating spaced apart. So if they're raising their hand and waiting for a teacher to do that, they're spending a lot of their lunchtime waiting for someone to open something for them. Plus, it's building those independent skills that we like to see. So usually what I like to recommend is that you would pack a lunch, maybe eat it at home or go to a park and see what items you're packing your child can open on their own and what items they might not be able to, and then teach them how they would open each of the items. So if it's a twisty top, teach them how to hold the twisty top and really turn it. If it's an item like a bag, how to pinch each side and pull it open. It seems really small, but it makes a big difference for us and for them. And then, as I mentioned before, you should let your child know each day what their lunch plan will be, because they will have to select that when they come into the classroom. I noticed in the chat that Mrs. Tyson put in there that our school is peanut and tree nut free. And that is something important to note. Every classroom all over the building is peanut and tree nut free. So no nut items in lunches or snacks.
I was going to add that yesterday, the USDA shared with us that they will extend the free school lunches not only through December 31st of this year, but also through next school year completely, which would be absolutely great. So parents, if there are times where, I don't know if you've experienced Miss Jess yet, our cafeteria head chef, but I'm telling you, she cooks some great stuff. Like we had roasted chickpeas the other day. So if you ever want your kids to try something different that you wouldn't necessarily think they'd like, have them buy school lunch and they can certainly try it and hopefully they like it. It is really delicious. She does a nice job. All right, moving along.
So these are some pictures of some very important people around our building. You can see towards the middle right is Miss KL, our school principal. Then we have Mrs. Anderson there towards the middle. She is our administrative assistant or secretary. You'll get to know her very well as you are enrolling your students or getting those papers in. In the bottom, we have pictured our librarian, Mr. Stevenson. And then not pictured, we have Mrs. Labita, who is our music teacher, Mr. Straight, who is our phys ed teacher. And then on our Zoom tonight, we have Mrs. Tyson, our school nurse, and Mrs. Hipsley, our school counselor. And they will be talking in just a short time about their roles in the school.
Wow, that came out quick. Hi, everyone. Always my main focus at the school is to keep everybody healthy and safe. And you can only imagine how that has compounded throughout this last year. So it's kind of been a crazy year for the school nurse, but also very challenging. And I've loved keeping everybody healthy and safe. So my role at the school is, I think I mentioned before that I'm there full time, all day, every day. I promote a healthy school environment. I assess injuries, illnesses. If your child is not feeling well, they will tell their teacher and their teacher will either call me or give them a hall pass if they're comfortable enough to do that. And they will come to me for any illnesses. If they're injured, usually it works the same way, unless it's something very serious. And then I, of course, go to them in that case. Because your children are going to be kindergartners, there's always the possibility of having an accident, whether that be a urine accident or maybe they've spilt their apple juice all over the front of their pants. Or their spaghetti down their shirt. So I always usually have a small amount of change of clothing in my clinic, but I do suggest that you go ahead and pack your kindergartner an extra set of clothes in their book bag that they can take to school and have in there all the time. I do have a pretty good variety of clothing, but it's not awesome. And I've often had kids say, I'm not wearing that. So if they have special clothing needs that, maybe they just want to, special things that they want to wear, then it's probably best to put it in their book bag. But in an emergency, no worries, I've got you covered. Each year I do hearing and vision screenings on the kindergartners. Your child will also be screened as a first grader, a third grader, and a fifth grader. So it gives us lots of opportunities to catch any kind of discrepancies or problems with vision and hearing. If we are doing our screenings and you do not hear from me, you can assume that your child has passed a screening. If you hear from me, then you'll know that there's some kind of an issue and we need to explore that further. I do have a small amount of medication that I keep in the clinic. I do keep as needed medication like Tylenol, Zyrtec, Tums. I never give any kind of medication without calling you first. So that is just don't worry about that. That will never happen. I would call you if I thought that something was needed, and then we would talk it out and decide whether or not that was appropriate. I'm not a huge medicine person, so I also believe in a lot of holistic medication and homeopathic treatments. So we can talk about those too. I do lots of essential oils, massages for headaches. We do meditation. I have a little calming space in my clinic. So for tummy aches, and peppermints for tummy aches. So lots of things like that that are, we can work that out together as a team.
And for staff headaches too.
And for staff headaches too. Yes,
Little
exactly.
peppermint really helps.
Yes.
Coming in for a massage.
Yeah, yes. I gave one of those yesterday to a staff member. They were pretty happy. I would need a copy of your child's immunization record prior to the start of school. If you have a partial record now that you would like to send me, that would be awesome. You can email it to me at cindy.tyson@bexley.us. But their immunizations, their full immunizations or kindergarten shots are due before the first day of school. There is a little bit of leadway there. You do have up to 14 days of the start of the school year before the immunizations need to be completed. But if they are not completed at that 14 days, then they would be asked to stay home at that point. So, and I'm always there to work out any kind of problem. So if you and I talk and we decide that that can be extended, we can do that. I want you to take time to, especially if this is your first child in the district, to take a look at the Bexley Health Pledge that is on our website. On Bexley City Schools. It just basically is telling everyone to monitor your health, stay home when you're ill, report any exposures to COVID-19 that you know of, or any positive diagnoses of COVID-19 to the school. The nurses at Bexley do all the contact tracing, so it's really important that we know that information as soon as possible so that we can lock that down right away. That's how we've been able to keep the school as safe as we have this year. If your child has a chronic health condition, diabetes, a seizure disorder, asthma, or has a life-threatening allergy, I would like to know that information as soon as possible. I think somebody was going to put my email in the chat, so that's great. You can always send me that through the chat. I've already looked through all of your registration medical information, so I think mostly we don't have anything like that, but just in case, go ahead and send me an email as well. If your child has asthma or a life-threatening allergy, we will need to keep in albuterol or whatever kind of medication they have for rescue at school. And then I will also need to keep an EpiPen at school for your child as well. Those require forms to be filled out by your physician and signed by your physician. And those can also be found on the Bexley City Schools website under health services. If your child needs to take medication at school, medication that has been prescribed to them or that they are currently taking, we mostly expect all medication to be given at home, if it can be given at home. But if it cannot be given at home, let's say it's something that has to be given at noon or has to be given at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, then there are forms that need to be filled out for that to happen as well. And again, just contact me and we can chat about that and figure out what's needed. Trying to think if I've forgotten anything.
Did have a question pop up in the chat about fever and symptom free without medication. Can you talk about what our standard usually is and how it also relates to COVID-19?
Oh yeah, that's a great idea. So yeah, so the typical rule of thumb is a child needs to be fever free without medication for 24 hours prior to returning to school. That also is the same rule when it comes to vomiting. So no vomiting for 24 hours without medication, and then they can return to school. With COVID-19, of course, anytime you would have any illness, really, I'm pretty much following up on all of those calls. So generally each day, if you've called your child in ill, Mrs. Anderson usually sends me the message as well. And so I kind of analyze that call and see if it needs to be followed up on. If I hear symptoms that I think is concerning, I generally reach out to you as a parent and we talk about what is needed. if your child's ill for, a day and all their symptoms resolve, there's generally not any need to worry. But if you ever have a question about it, feel free to reach out to me, because I can always, like I said, we can talk about that and figure out what's best.
And Cindy, it's really interesting. You and I've talked about this, and we've talked about this as a COVID task force, but overall, the health of our building, and I'm knocking on real wood right now, has truly been wonderful this year. And a big part of that is, yes, because we wear masks, but the other big part of that, and we clean pretty consistently, and kids are constantly washing in as they come into the classroom, washing out, or hand sanitizing. The other piece to this too is truly, when you're not feeling well, stay home. And then you get healthier a lot quicker too, because you're not prolonging and exhausting your body. And so that's one thing I can honestly say. Yes, I've always been the parent that sent my kid to school with a cold, especially in childcare. But honestly, this year I didn't, and they healed a lot quicker too. I think it's a lot less stress. So just something for you to consider as we, start to figure out how do we navigate coming out of a pandemic and what that looks like.
Yeah, these are different times. And so we, where you would generally have sent your child to school when they were saying they weren't feeling well, you'd be like, oh, just give it a try. We'll see how things go. We're asking that we no longer do that. If at all possible, to keep your child home if they're not feeling well, and then figure that out at home for next year.
And I had a parent ask me, Cindy, they said our absence is a lot higher. And the truth of it is no. In fact, I think it's because we are so much healthier. But when people have kept their children home, we typically see, or something like this, that absenteeism really rises. And that's not the case. We have actually way less absenteeism this year. So.
Yes, agreed.
I'm sorry. Cindy, anything else you want to add before we go on to the next one?
I don't think so, but I'm open to any questions if anybody wants to put anything in the chat.
Thanks, Cindy. And we really appreciate you. We would never have mitigated this year and navigated as well as we did without you. The cases, again, knock on wood, at Montrose have been so tiny, and we're really grateful for you.
Yeah, Montrose rocked it out. That wasn't just me, though. That was everybody.
Well, thanks for leading us. All right, headed on the next part. Mrs. Hipsley.
All right. Well, I do want to stop before I talk about some of my role and just talk about just how incredibly lucky your kindergartners are to come to Montrose. We have the most amazing kindergarten teachers. Every time I walk into their classroom and I see what they are managing and what they're doing in the way of literacy and math and social emotional learning and just everything that they do, and they just do it with such grace, and their feathers are never ruffled. They just do such an amazing job. And if I had a kindergartner coming into Montrose right now, knowing what I know, I would not have any worries or any stressors at all. So if you're not familiar with our kindergarten teachers, just know you are in really good hands. And then the other thing I want to say, I'm going to embarrass Miss Tyson, but she talked about her role here at school, but she was also recognized by the city and the Bexley Women's Club for just all of her amazing work. It went well beyond what the role of what a school nurse would do in a building. And we are just, again, so incredibly lucky to have such an amazing asset to our building. But I am going to come down for the massages. I didn't recognize that. I was just hitting up the peppermints and the Advil.
Yeah.
Anyhow, okay.
Essential oil massage.
Yeah, so I want to talk real quick about me. I know that any of you that are new to Montrose, you'll also see me at the new family night. So I don't want to talk and double up too much, but some of the things you can expect out of me is I will be in the kindergarten classrooms talking about SEL, that's social emotional learning. We do classroom skills at the beginning. We go into empathy, problem solving, emotional management, which includes our fair ways to play. I also do some small group counseling, individual work. If your child ever begins to go down a 504 route, I am also the 504 coordinator, work with our MTSS planning. So a lot of the things that are collaborative with our teachers as well. I also work with outside agencies throughout the community. So not just with mental health, but also sometimes there are other barriers to your child's education, whether it's financial or just finding different resources. So I'm always here to help with that. Right now, if you respond or if you email me, you will get an automatic response from me with a variety of resources. I also have a website that you can always hop on there. I think probably one of the biggest things to know is the best way to reach me is probably by email. I am on my email quite a bit. Leaving me a voicemail probably is going to be like an overnight or 24 hours, but an email usually, I'm pretty responsive, or at least by the next morning, I'm able to get to you. So email is always the best way. If you're not familiar with our email system here in Bexley, it's always the teacher's first name dot last name, and then it's bexley.us. And so I'm michelle.hipsley@bexley.us. Again, the way that I see students, it's very common for me to see students. So if you hear that your child talked with me, I usually see about half of the students in the building, either in a small group or independently throughout the school year. And by the time you've come through, your kid has come through, they will have seen me at some point in my office space. So that's not uncommon. And the thing that you need to know is that if you need a referral, you can either just email me. We do self-refer, but generally kindergartners don't walk up to my space for self-referral. So parents or the kindergarten teacher will refer. Although I do catch it in the hallway sometimes. I really need to talk with you. And then we, that's our self-referral. It's not necessarily via form. But if you ever have any questions or anything, you can reach out to me. I think it is important for you to know that I am a parent. And so I've made several mistakes. I'm a human parent, even though I'm a school counselor. And so, I have no judgment at all. And if anything, I have empathy, and we're in the same boat. So always remember that.
Michelle, you have a question, and it says in here, what is a 504 plan? And I'm happy to answer that too, if you'd like.
So generally with the 504 plan is when a student has some type of disability that impacts their ability to do some type of lifelong learn. So basically in a school setting, it's going to be learning or concentrating or thinking. And it has to be substantially limiting to the child's learning, concentrating or thinking. Generally in a school setting, we will have things like students with ADHD, anxiety, epilepsy. I'm trying to think if I've left any out that are probably our biggest ones, but the biggest piece there is if it's substantially impacting their ability to access their learning.
Nice job. That's great. I just put a little definition in there too, just a plan to accommodate, like Michelle said. Great. Thanks, Michelle. All right, moving right along.
So I will take this slide. Believe it or not, this will be the class of 2034. And we are excited to meet them, get to know them. Many of you, we have had the opportunity to have your children before, and we're excited to have you back again and begin the next phase of your child's educational journey with you.
Yay. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Yeah. Questions, go ahead and you can put them in the chat. I'll stop sharing now.
Were we going to talk about the PTO, or was that not?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Did I miss that? Let me go
Okay,
back.
I didn't see one of our PTO members on here. I didn't know if I missed their,
Well,
I didn't know if they wanted to chat for a moment.
if they are, they can unmute themselves, and I'm happy to share too. We actually have a parent-teacher organization, PTO, and just by being parents and guardians, you are a member, which I absolutely love about Montrose. I've never been to a school where that's just an automatic given, that just by being a parent or a guardian, you are a member of the PTO. And lots of our PTO, like exec or committee reps, get involved right in as kindergarten families. And it doesn't take that you have to know someone. It's just a matter of helping with an event or leading an activity or helping think of some creative ways to do things, especially this school year. But we have lots of fun events planned throughout the year. And our PTO and I say this, I probably shouldn't because it's going to be recorded and posted, but is the most amazing PTO I have ever, ever, ever been a part of in my whole life. They every week is some kind of fun, supportive activity or treat or kind thing in my mailbox or for our staff. I mean, it's just absolutely wonderful. They're a tremendous group of people, and we're fortunate that you're going to be joining us this next year as PTO members. Okay, great. Any questions? Anybody wants to be brave? Well, those of you can stay on certainly if you have questions. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and end tonight's kindergarten information evening. So appreciative for everybody's time and for joining us. We hope you have a wonderful evening, and we're so excited to see your little ones in August. Thanks so much again for joining us. Bye, you guys.
Bye. Thank you so much for joining us. Can't wait to see your kiddos.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. There might be one now. Yay!
Hi, girlies.
We'll take some bites of those popsicles. That's great. Nice job, team.
So somebody asked, maybe Cindy, is there anything else we need beyond immunization and allergy records? I would think just everything that came along with the registration that you did at the central office. They ask you for a lot of paperwork, so that should be.
Yes, just the immunization records, correct.
Bridget's asking a great question about expected class sizes. Typically and again, we look at kindergarten, typically anywhere from 18 to 22, 24 students. But, this year with the pandemic, we're not sure what numbers we're going to see, but I don't anticipate huge numbers. So I hope that helps. You're welcome. Okay, I'm going to stop recording.